I was sitting on the floor of our bedroom holding his phone in both hands, and I could not move. Not because I was frozen with shock. Not because I was crying so hard I could not stand. I was sitting on that floor completely still because some part of me had simply gone quiet, like a machine that had been running too hard for too long, and finally, quietly, had nothing left to give. The screen in my hands was still lit up. The messages were still there. I had read them so many times in the last few minutes that the words had stopped looking like words. They just looked like shapes. Little black shapes on a white screen that had ended something I could not yet name. Outside the door, I could hear our daughter. She was in her crib, making those small sounds she makes when she is not quite awake and not quite asleep. That soft noise she makes, like a question she does not know how to ask yet. I listened to her and I thought, she had no idea that anything in her world had changed, and I was going to make sure it stayed that way. I looked back down at the screen. Triplets. He had triplets with another woman, born while our daughter was still 4 months old. And his mother, the woman who had called me daughter since the day I married her son, was living with them, helping raise them, keeping the secret like it was hers to keep. I sat on that floor for a long time, and the same thought kept coming back, over and over, quiet and clear. I had been paying for his daughter's diapers, and the whole time he knew exactly where the money for 3 more children was coming from. But let me take you back to where this all began, because none of this will make sense without the before. And the before matters. It always does. I met my husband when we were both young and still figuring out what life was going to ask of us. He was warm. He was gentle. He made me feel safe in the way that only a few people in your life ever really do. When he struggled, and he struggled often, even back then, I did not see it as a warning. I saw it as something we would grow through together. I knew going in that money was not going to be easy. He was honest about that, at least. His work was inconsistent. Some months were better than others, but most months were not enough. I told myself that was fine. I told myself I was the kind of woman who could handle that. We were a team. That was the word I kept coming back to. A team. Whatever he lacked, I would fill. That is what love looks like when it is real. That is what I believed. We got married, we built a home, and then, 11 months in, we found out we were having a daughter. That was the happiest I had ever felt in my life.
This is nice.
I had no idea what was quietly being built behind my back. The first year of our daughter's life was exhausting in the way that all new parents are exhausted. The sleepless nights, the feeding schedules, the constant low hum of worry that comes with keeping something so small and so new alive. But layered underneath all of that was a second exhaustion, a quieter one. The kind that lives in your chest and never fully lets go. The financial kind. Diapers, baby food, hospital visits, the small daily costs that add up faster than you ever expect. I paid for almost all of it. I paid for the groceries. I paid for the household bills. I paid for things I should not have had to think about alone because I was supposed to have a partner. And every time I asked him to contribute, even small amounts, even just enough to cover one bill, he would look at me with those tired eyes and say it. Where do you expect me to get that money from? I heard that line so many times it stopped being a question. It became wallpaper, something I had learned to hear without really listening to anymore. My brain would register the words and simply move on to figuring out how to cover the gap myself. That was the routine. That was our life. I made excuses for him. Inside my own head, every single day, I made excuses for this man. I told myself he was trying. I told myself the pressure was getting to him. I told myself that one day things would shift and he would stand up and carry his share, and I would look back on this season and be proud I had stayed. I told myself that being patient was the same thing as being strong. I was wrong about that, but I did not know it yet. Then his behavior started to change. It was not one big sudden shift. It was small. The kind of change you only recognize later when you look back and connect all the moments you dismissed at the time. He became quieter, more distracted. His jaw would tighten at small things that would not have bothered him before. He started taking phone calls outside, stepping away and coming back in with his face reset into something carefully blank. I noticed. Of course I noticed, but I told myself I was reading too much into things because I was tired, and tired people see shadows everywhere.
At night, he would talk in his sleep. Not words exactly, more like sounds, like someone pushing back against something heavy they could not get free from. I would tap his shoulder, ask him to wake up, ask him what was wrong, ask him to just let me in. "I'm fine," he would say, every single time. Just that. Then he would roll over and go back to sleep. I prayed for him. That sounds like a small thing, but it was not small to me. When you have given everything practical you have to give, and there is still a gap you cannot fill, prayer becomes the last place where you can still show up for someone. I prayed for him every morning and every night, and I believed, with everything I had, that the man sleeping next to me was worth every single word. I need you to remember that. I need you to hold on to what I was still believing at this point in the story. Because she called on a Thursday afternoon. A woman who knew my husband from the place he grew up. We were not close, but we knew each other. She called my number, and when I picked up, she was whispering. Not quietly, actually whispering, like she was afraid the air around her might carry her words somewhere they were not supposed to go. She stopped twice before she said anything real. Then she said it. The truth has to come out one day, no matter what. I felt my whole body go still. I told her to just say it. Your husband has children with another woman from back home. They are babies. Triplets. I laughed. It came out before I could stop it. Not a real laugh, more like the sound a person makes when their brain receives information it simply refuses to accept. A short, sharp exhale with no humor in it at all. I remember I was standing in the kitchen when she told me. The tap was dripping. That slow, steady drip I had been meaning to fix for weeks. I stood there listening to this woman whisper the word triplets into my ear, while the tap dripped and my daughter's baby monitor sat on the counter glowing its small green light, and I genuinely thought I had misheard her. My husband, who could not tell me where $30 was going to come from for grocery day. The man who lay next to me at night and talked in his sleep like someone being chased. That man had created 3 more children, while I was at home holding our family together with both hands and running out of grip. I thanked her. My voice sounded completely normal. That surprised me more than anything. I hung up and stood in that kitchen without moving, listening to the tap drip, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a small, quiet voice said, "You already knew something was wrong. You have known for months. You just did not want to be right." I did not confront him. Not right away. What I did instead was watch. Really watch. The way you do when the filter of trust has been lifted, and suddenly everything looks different in the new light. I paid attention to things I had been softening, the calls he took outside, the way his phone screen was never facing up anymore, the strange tension in his body whenever it buzzed in the evenings. I watched all of it, and I felt something I had not let myself feel in a very long time. Doubt. Real, clear, unignorable doubt. One afternoon while he was asleep, I picked up his phone. My hands were steady. That was the first thing I noticed. I had expected them to shake, but they did not. I held that phone like it was something ordinary, and I opened his messages. The first thing I saw was her name. I did not recognize it. I opened the thread and started reading from the top, the way you do when you are still hoping there is an innocent explanation waiting somewhere further up the page. There was no innocent explanation. The messages went back months, long threads, urgent tones. She needed money before Tuesday. She needed money before the weekend. And threaded through all of it were his replies, short, a little desperate, always promising. Then one message stopped me completely. It's very urgent. I need $190 before this evening. Please don't make me ask again. And below it, sent within the hour, he had. I went through his entire transaction history on his banking app, and every single line hit me somewhere new. $190 on a Thursday, $160 the following Friday, $220 2 weeks after that. I sat with those numbers and I thought about the week I had needed $40 for diapers, and he had looked at me with those tired eyes and asked where I expected him to find it. I thought about the month I had covered the electricity bill alone. I thought about every single time I had told myself he was struggling, he was trying, he was doing his best. He was not struggling. He was choosing. Every single week, he was choosing where the money went, and it was not going to us. I kept scrolling. I don't know why I kept going. Some part of me needed to see all of it. Every line, every amount, like I was building a case against a version of my life I was not yet ready to give up on.
Then I scrolled to the part that took the floor out from under me. His mother knew. She was not just aware of it somewhere in the background. She was living with the other woman, staying in her home, helping care for those 3 children. My mother-in-law, the woman who had held my hand at my wedding and told me I was her daughter now, had been keeping this secret for months. Those babies were born when my own daughter was just 4 months old. 4 months. My daughter was barely holding her head up on her own, and somewhere else, in a home I had never seen, there were 3 more children my husband had made, and his entire family had looked me in the face and said nothing. I do not know how long I sat on that floor. Time stopped working properly. My daughter was still making soft sounds in her crib. The afternoon light was moving slowly across the wall, and I was sitting there, completely still, holding the proof of a life he had been living right alongside mine. At the table, his phone was in front of me. He looked at it. Then he looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen there before. Not guilt, not even fear. Something closer to relief, like a man who has been waiting for something heavy to finally come down. He sat across from me and said nothing. My voice was steady when I asked him to explain what I had seen, completely steady. And this man, the man I had carried for 3 years, the man I had filled the gaps for and prayed over and made excuses for every single day, looked at me and said it with a calmness I will carry with me for the rest of my life. My mom wanted to talk to you about it. We just didn't know how to start. That was it. That was everything he gave me. He didn't apologize. He didn't fall apart. He didn't give me even one moment that looked like genuine regret. The plan to tell me had just been delayed, he said. Like I was a stranger on a mailing list who had not been updated in time. I felt my hands press flat on the table. Is that all you can say? My voice was still steady. I still do not know how. After everything I have done for this family, after everything I gave and held together and carried alone, that is all you have for me? That you didn't know how to start? He sat there without moving. The man who had spent 3 years explaining why money never came had suddenly run completely dry of words. He just looked at me, and I looked back at him, and the silence between us said everything that his mouth could not. His mother called me later that evening. I saw her name on the screen and sat with it for a moment before I answered. This was the woman who had held my hand at my wedding, who had cried when our daughter was born and called her a blessing and said she had been waiting years for this moment. I had believed every word. I had loved her the way you love someone who chose you, not by blood, but by decision. I answered. Her voice was soft, measured, the kind of soft that is not really softness at all, but is actually the very careful management of a situation that has finally run out of road. She said she had wanted to tell me. She said it had never felt like the right time. She said she hoped I knew she had never wanted me to be hurt. I listened. I did not interrupt. I let every word come through the phone, and I sat with each one, and I thought about her in that other woman's home, folding laundry or holding those babies or just being present, while I was at home believing I was part of a family, while I was praying for her son every morning, while I was covering his bills because I believed in him and I believed in us. She had looked me in the eye at my wedding. She had called me daughter. And somewhere in the months that followed, she had made a choice to protect her son's secret instead of protecting me. When she finished speaking, I did not raise my voice. I simply said I had heard her. Then I ended the call, set the phone face down on the table, and sat in the quiet of the home I had mostly paid for. And I felt something settle inside me that had no clean name. Not anger, not grief. Something underneath both of those things. Something colder. Something that does not leave quickly. His father never called. And honestly, I respected that, because what was there to say? 3 years. That is how long I gave this marriage everything I had. I paid the bills. I raised our daughter. I believed in a man who was using my belief as a cover, and on top of everything else, our rent was due. We had been sitting together just days before, trying to figure out how to pay it. He had asked me, with a completely straight face, where he was going to find the full amount on his own. I had promised to cover more than half, because that is what I always did. I always covered more than half. Now I knew exactly why he never had enough. Life after that conversation did not change overnight. Some things never do. There were still practical things to face. Our daughter, the home, the bills that did not pause because my world had shifted. The weight of all of it did not lift just because the truth had finally landed. But something inside me had changed in a way that could not be unchanged. I had spent 3 years believing that love meant absorbing someone else's failures without breaking. I had confused patience with endurance and endurance with strength. I had told myself that filling every gap, covering every shortage, and asking for nothing back was what a good partner does. What I know now is that love is not supposed to empty you. A real partnership does not ask one person to keep pouring until there is nothing left in them. And the people who are supposed to stand beside you in the truth, they should not be the ones helping others hide from it. I have worked hard to move through the anger rather than live inside it, because staying there would mean he was still taking something from me, and he had already taken enough. What I have now is my daughter, her soft sounds in the morning, her small hands reaching up, the way she looks at me like I am the whole world. That is real. That belongs to me, and nothing that happened before can reach it. So I want to ask you something, and I mean this sincerely. If this had been you, if you had given everything to someone, held the whole thing together with your own two hands, and then found out they had been quietly building a whole other life behind your back, what would you have done differently? At what point would you have stopped? What was the moment you would have listened to that quiet voice that already knew? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.